Welcome to the first episode of Marked Out Radio in 2025. I'm Sean.
And I'm Dana.
And Happy New Year, everybody. So, first things first, we got a lot of feedback. Probably the most feedback out of any episode we've done so far about the Olivia Hussey episode. Were you surprised by that?
I think a little bit, because you're talking about an episode that at its core is dealing with a star from, the 1960s, 1970s, and so on. It's not the most, maybe, quote-unquote, relevant today, but I think they really, the listeners really appreciated how, behind the scenes we took them.
I mean, I think that was the goal, to get people an inside look at what it's like to book someone, what that process is like. And it's funny because, typically a little bit about my process. So after we record and we edit and we upload these episodes, I'll usually listen to each one through once just for technical reasons, to listen to if there are any editing mistakes, if there were places I think could be tightened up. And you say you listen to them kind of for the same thing. And just to kind of get a sense if what I heard back when I listened to it the second time mirrors kind of my feeling when we recorded it the first time, to see if what I was thinking of for the first time matches what listening back on the second time. And I'm not gonna, this is gonna sound nuts, but I listened to this episode 3 times after over the course of this week.
No, it's really, I didn't listen to it 3 times just because I honestly haven't been in the car that long to be able to do that. But it's really well done. I feel like an idiot, honestly, like complimenting us this much, but I mean, it really is good. I think I didn't listen back and feel any sort of oh, I wish I had said that, or I wish I hadn't said that. It was honestly everything I wanted to get out, I feel I got out.
Yeah, and I think it's a compelling story, and it's funny because, living through it, it's hard to convey the stress, the overwhelming stress of that period of time, which really was just to be doing something fun, and it was overwhelmingly stressful. And I hope, I guess we were somewhat successful at conveying the stress of all that, but it really was a moment where it was an overwhelming amount of stress relative to the potential reward. So it definitely puts into perspective, I think, people who do a lot of promoting and do it successfully. You got to be willing to subject yourself to treatment that probably most of us are not willing to subject ourselves to. And I think for me, that's one of, there's a bunch of reasons, but that's one of the many reasons why there's really no chance I would ever see myself doing this full time, even in retirement, let's say, or even in the future, just because I don't have the stamina to be treated the way I was treated back then. I just don't have I don't have the willingness to endure it. I'll just walk away. I'm not into it. That's just, it's just an interesting thing that when I see the people who are very sometimes when the promoters go on Facebook or they rant and they complain about how they're treated. I know I personally have rolled my eyes at some of it. I've heard people make fun of and joke. We've all seen on Facebook at certain points in the past, Dave from Monster Mania or Kevin from Chiller kind of complain in public about how they're treated and how people talk about their shows. And I do kind of understand, even on a very, very small level, how over time that kind of stuff can wear you out.
Yeah. I definitely can see your point about not wanting to be treated that way. I would argue, just for devil's advocate, I guarantee if you did a second deal like Olivia, it would probably be slightly less stressful than the first. The next one would be slightly less stressful than the one before that, and so on and so forth. I imagine you could replicate this with lessening stress, but your willingness to be treated like dirt in times and instances, that's something that you either have to be willing to accept or not. I don't think time would really harden you to that.
Yeah, that's probably like anything else. You develop a callus and stuff. But we just wanted to read some of the feedback we got because it was interesting. Some from YouTube, some from Facebook, kind of all over the place. So the first one was from YouTube. Someone named Joe P7123 wrote, for me, it was the behind the scenes interaction, discussions, and what goes into getting these people to show up and do what they committed to. As someone that's been going to wrestling cons since the 80s, but never to a celebrity con, it was very informative. And it's interesting because one of the things that we talk about often is the kind of weird intersection or cross section of our audience, I mean, it's no secret, a bunch of the people we know and who we've met have been through the wrestling space, through the wrestling cons. That's how we all kind of met each other. But as we've branched out, and we do see a ton of overlap between these audiences, we're always questioning. One of the big questions was, with so many wrestling con people as our audience, are they going to want to hear about a 72-year-old woman who starred in a movie about a Shakespeare play? But I think a compelling story is a compelling story, right? So I guess you do the next one.
You got it. This comment.
You cut off completely.
That's great.
It started with this comment, and then everything went dead.
Okay, my comment is coming from Facebook. I listen to a lot of great storytellers on podcasts. Guys like Jim Cornette and Dutch Mantel, who can regale a story that not only paints a vivid picture, but sparks emotion. After listening to the guys from the Marked Out podcast tell their Olivia Hussey Chiller Theater story, I gotta put them right up there with Corny and Dirty Dutch as far as great storytelling goes. And that is from Captain Kangaroo, Marked Out original, friend of the show.
I think his praise is a little bit effusive here, and not that I'm not grateful for it, but it is very much appreciated. But yeah, that's a nice compliment, I think.
Extremely.
And then finally, Greg Izzy, also longtime Marked Out moderator, commented on Facebook. Well, I would recommend any of those who whine and moan when conventions like Chiller don't book many of the oddball names they suggest to listen to this. Sadly, yes, many of these older celebs become incredibly jaded by being screwed over time and time again in their business.
Very true.
I think, yeah, it's very true. I think it's funny because there is a contingent of fans, and in the interest of full disclosure, you and I were in that contingent 15 years ago or so, and we would complain about cons and who they booked and why didn't they book so and so, more on the wrestling end, but still. And there are these people who complain and whine, why don't you book this one? Why don't you book that one? Why don't you book this one? And they really don't realize, and we really didn't realize, how annoying people are. It should be as simple as coming to an agreement on price, paying the price, executing the arrangement, and going home. It would be lovely if that were the case, but it just seems like, and what we've learned is that is really not always true.
Yeah, we're sort of applying the non-celebrity way I think most of us go about our day jobs. We're not in the office negotiating with our boss on a daily basis and changing the deal. It's as simple as we are satisfied enough with our salary that we keep coming, and that's it. But for celebrities, I guess and as you said last week, they exist in a place with such privilege and just that they feel like they're entitled to so much more than anyone else that they just feel like they can be unreasonably difficult no matter what the circumstances.
So yeah, that's kind of the big takeaway of the whole thing. That even if someone is a celebrity or was a celebrity years ago, or a lot of times that piece of their identity really kind of messes with the ego. And there's a lot of people for whom that's true. So that's it for Olivia. Again, if you have any other thoughts or questions about it, feel free to reach out. So you actually, you brought this up. You sent me a text with an ad from Hollywood Show. Hollywood Show is kind of an interesting con. It's been running for a really long time. There's two Hollywood shows out in California, right? I think one of them's in Burbank and one of them's in Hollywood. Am I wrong about that?
I honestly have never looked close enough to know. I just always see the Hollywood Show. I'm not honestly sure about location.
Yeah, I don't really follow it because there's Hollywood Show is a show that runs in California, and they typically run. So it's kind of like a chiller-ish show in the sense, but it's a lot of like soap opera actors and a lot of sort of lower tier TV actors who wouldn't really draw and wouldn't make sense to fly in for a show. But since they're local to Hollywood Show, they just drive themselves in, park at a table, and they're able to sell a couple $100 worth of 8x10s for the weekend. And so Hollywood Show kind of built this reputation, though, for having a lot of these television talent and lower end movie talent, and once in a while they'll kind of enter the realm of a larger name. Dick Van Dyke has done Hollywood Show a bunch of times. Actually, Olivia Hussey did Hollywood Show years and years ago. So there are people, they do have larger names, but it's mostly smaller names. But you noticed that Hollywood Show was advertising a particularly interesting name.
Absolutely right. They added Jeffrey Jones to the Hollywood Show. And if you're unsure of who Jeffrey Jones is,
he's not a household name, right? Yeah.
No, he's not. He was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He was, I believe he was the principal. He was in Deadwood, interestingly enough, which is the reunion that the Hollywood Show is putting on. He's one of those guys, if you Google him, you see his face, you're going to recognize him from a bunch of things, but he's not far from a household name.
He had a ton of character acting credits. So
what makes this news noteworthy? In 2023, he was added to Rhode Island Comic-Con, which it was met with mixed reviews and mixed feedback because he is actually a registered sex offender. He was arrested for the possession of child pornography, and he supposedly hired a 14-year-old boy to pose for explicit photographs. He was sentenced to 5 years probation and then was required to register annually as a sex offender, something that he has failed to do on one occasion, which got him arrested again.
So I know that when Rhode Island announced him, they quickly pulled that announcement and claimed that a vendor booked him without the knowledge of the con. I believe that's true. A show like Rhode Island is, a show like Rhode Island is run by it's funded by a furniture store, a furniture conglomerate, and so they're not going to know the intricacies of the specific bookings. I believe Rhode Island. I mean, you do know that there was a private done with Jeffrey Jones not too long ago.
I'm assuming it wasn't anywhere near a school.
No, it was the interesting piece of it. I believe, now I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure it was the same vendor who tried to bring him to Rhode Island did a private. So there's definitely people who complain and say, that these cons are trying to make money on the back of someone who is a sex offender. They're trying, like, these cons are allowing a sex offender an opportunity to make money, or even having him out in public where he can be around children. There's some, even though, I mean, at a con, there's no opportunity to be in a private area or anything like that. But just the overall kind of skeeviness of it is such that it shouldn't be allowed. What are your thoughts on this?
I honestly don't know. It's a tough question. It really is. Part of me hears the headline, reads the headline, and thinks, like, why is this person at a show? I imagine the Hollywood Show attracts families, even though a lot of the names you see, I don't imagine many children are lining up to meet. But still, I'm sure children are dragged there. There's probably some weird children that want to meet the stars of the 70s. But at the same time, are we, I hate to defend someone with such a heinous record, but I mean, people that are sex offenders are entitled to make money. They're entitled to work. Like, if he can't do a convention, what can he do? Obviously, there's certain things he simply can't do for obvious reasons. But I don't have a tremendous aversion to this. I wouldn't protest. I wouldn't sit out the show if I went to it. I wouldn't go crazy online complaining about it. Would I meet him? I don't know.
Don't lie.
I probably would. I probably would.
You can be anyone. We could reanimate Genghis Khan. You get a photo op. Let's not pretend, right?
That is true.
But I think and I really don't want to go down a political rabbit hole here. I really do not. But you did touch on it, and so I'm going to say my piece on this. I think we as a society really have not thought very well and about how we deal with people who we don't want interacting with children, but still allowing them to live and function as human beings. And I think what too often happens is you have a guy like this, or I mean, this guy is noteworthy because he was in the movies, but you have someone else who is a registered sex offender, and then all of a sudden they do their punishment, they serve prison or whatever they do, probation, whatever. And then sort of afterwards, they're kind of prevented from ever living again. And like, that's fine, I guess, if you're going to it would give them money or put them on welfare or some kind of thing to allow their survival. But it seems really strange, I think, to have a finite defined punishment, but then really continue to just prevent someone from eating more or less for the rest of their life. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of you were alluding to. So it is a really strange thing. Should he be a part of a con? I don't know. I mean, again, there is no risk. Let's be honest. There is no risk of him committing a sex-based crime on the floor of the Hollywood show. Number one, the average age is like 65. Number
unless
two,
he's Gary Busey.
Well, and that's a whole other issue, if the Gary Busey thing kind of got swept under the rug a little bit. But in all seriousness, there's really no serious risk of him doing something on the floor of the show. There's no instance where he's going to be in private with a kid. So really what this is about is wanting to punish him in perpetuity. And I do understand that impulse. I do understand why some people might want to be, well, he should always be, but that's not how we function in a civil society. If someone commits a crime, there's a prescribed penalty for that crime. And then when they satisfy that penalty, then they can move on. So we kind of have this weird limbo for people. And I don't know the specifics of the Jeffrey Jones case. It's puzzling to me, like knowing what he was accused of doing and knowing what the evidence was, and then seeing he only got 5 years probation suggests something. I don't really know what. It's kind of I thought a little bit of a light punishment that he didn't do time. But at the same time, if again, guy needs to eat, what exactly do you propose that he do? It's not like he can go work at Home Depot as a registered sex offender, because they won't take him either, because kids come through the store. And so if anything, doing things like private signings or even a public appearance where he's closely monitored, to me seems like a safer option than, something else.
Yeah, he's not going to be going to Trader Joe's with Jeffrey Owens from The Cosby Show. That's for sure. So, I mean, what else is he really going to do? And on the flip side of this, since we are talking about potential sex offenders, if somehow, selfishly, this led to Stephen Collins from Seventh Heaven, who had his own little child porn issue, if this would sort of normalize perverts and degenerates coming out to conventions, I mean, beyond the ones that already do, I'd be online to meet Stephen Collins, because growing up I loved Seventh Heaven. So just to make that all about me and show what a hypocrite I am, since I'm unsure about Jeffrey Jones and then I want Stephen Collins. But yeah, it's an interesting topic, I think.
So if you're shopping for autographs, check out www.markedoutcollectibles.com or our eBay store at Marked Out Collectibles. To contact us for any reason, please email markedoutcollectibles@gmail.com or join the Marked Out Collectibles official marketplace on Facebook. All links are in the show notes on Facebook and Substack.
All right, guys. On January 26th in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey at the Mecca, there is a show coming up, PWJ Damaged Goods. The doors open at 4 p.m. Bell time is 5 p.m. This card is absolutely stacked. You have Charles Mason versus Steve Macklin. WWE ID talent Marcus Mathers versus Trevor Lee. You have Zeta Steele from the ID list. The card is absolutely jam-packed. We will be there. You should be there. Get tickets if you haven't already done so. And one person that got a free ticket, courtesy of Marked Out Radio, is listener Zach Linder. Congratulations, Zach. You commented first with the code word hussy.
Yeah, congratulations. I was waiting for it to. I'm not gonna lie. I was like anxiously waiting for the code word to appear on social media. Someone, I forget who it was, someone posted like, oh, I know the code word, but I can't use the ticket or something. And so I was excited by it. It was kind of an experiment to see, how quickly it would go. It went pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was a fun little experiment. I'm glad, someone that we, I've interacted with Zach online a lot. He's a good guy, so that's nice that he got the ticket. Swing by the table, say hello when you're there, and congratulations again.
And if you want your event, product, or brand advertised on episodes of Marked Out Radio, reach out to us today at markedoutcollectibles@gmail.com. All right, so the bulk of this episode, this was your idea, and really it was taking from a Marked Out original board tradition. The truth of it is the boards, we've talked about this a little, but the board has died. It's not dead, but the board software in general is just not drawing the kind of traffic that it used to now that social media has really taken over as the primary mode of communication for people. So, rather than post stuff on the board, people post stuff on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, TikTok, whatever. But so every year we had a tradition on the board, the year-end awards. And the year-end awards were really, 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 really popular on the board. And so you came up with the idea of doing kind of our own little year in review for Marked Out Radio. And so, I mean, we have our categories here. This was your idea, so I'm gonna let you take the lead on this.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is just another continuation of Marked Out. That's why I feel like this podcast works so well, because it really just takes like a day in the life of Marked Out back in 2010 and just puts it to an audio form. So the year-end awards were always a lot of fun. Even when you'd have the people like Class and Jerry complaining about loopholes, and I can't even recall the exact things they would whine and complain about, but there was always whines and complaints, and this shouldn't be allowed. And I would end up threatening to make it the last year-end awards because it was so annoying. But at the end of the day, we would do it again. It was always fun. So what I want to do with these topics, I will first read off the topics that we're going to get into. And what I want you guys to do in the comments, if you agree with us, let us know. If you think our list is stupid, if you think we forgot something, let us know. This is going to largely be from a personal perspective, but share your list, share your thoughts. Let's make this as interactive as possible.
What's funny is I think people tend to think that because we're always at the same shows that we approach the hobby and collecting and pop culture in the same way, when really our tastes are very, very, very different from each other in just many, many ways. We are not monolithic at all in our opinions. We're very, very different. And so I think that'll come out in our top personal things from the year, because, I imagine there's a lot of stuff. I have a feeling what was noteworthy to me was really a blip on the radar for you, and vice versa. I remember back at one of the cons, and I won't say which one, but I remember saying, we both said this con is an amazing con. The lineup is phenomenal. And then I looked at your list and my list at the con were completely different people with very little overlap. And it's funny how we could think the same. One con has an amazing lineup. We both think that, but we have the exact opposite wants at that show.
And just we'll see how our lists line up, but during pre-show I was very, very concerned that we share nothing. So our actual lists right now are on individual documents. We can't see each other's list. I didn't want
We're going in cold. We're going in cold.
So actually, I'm going to go category by category. Our first category, we are going to talk about our top personal meets of 2024. Sean, do you want to start us off?
Do you want to do it like I'll do one, you do one, I'll do one, you do one, like that?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll do them in reverse order from like least significant to most significant, like that, like so it builds up to the best one kind of thing.
Sounds good.
Okay. So one of my most important personal meets of 2024 was way back in March. It was the WrestleMania weekend in Philadelphia. At the last minute, Aja Kong and Kyoko Inoue were added to Wrestle Reunion, two women's wrestlers from the mid-90s. I mean, they're still working today, who are absolute animals. They're phenomenal, and they're like two of the idols for the women who are doing amazing things in WWE and AEW today. They were announced at the last minute, and I was as you remember, I was absolutely freaking out at that announcement and super excited.
You were also a little bit pissed that you didn't have time to prepare adequately, but
I was excited. Pretty mad. I wanted to get some items and some merch, and I could not.
All right, starting my list off, back in NYC at Rough Trade, Common and Pete Rock promoting their album. Those two guys are just legendary figures in hip hop. Both legendary like MCs. Pete Rock is one of the greatest producers of all time. I would put him on Mount Rushmore of hip hop producers. That was really cool. As I discussed on here, not without a little bit of frustration, because Common did like 15 extras for the guy in front of me, and I had nothing besides the vinyl and the poster they were giving out. So I wished I had more, but I can't complain. I got 2 autographs from each and a photo with each.
Yeah,
and
you
those
racked,
two,
yeah, racked.
I know. I could have racked. It wasn't as good as it could have been, but definitely on my list.
So for me, I did a VIP meet and greet in November with the band Saves the Day, and with I really didn't think. I thought it was going to be a kind of a quick thing, and what it turned into was, hanging out and playing trivia and just having a much kind of, it was a little bit strange, but also a much cooler sort of meet and greet experience than you're typically used to. I've been a fan of Saves the Day since either 99 or 2000. So you're talking about well north of 20 years. And so that was a really cool experience.
For me, the next name is actor John David Washington. I think for this one, it was a combination of things. First being, Black Klansman is one of my all-time favorite movies. I absolutely love that movie. He's in a bunch of other things I've really, really liked. And it was also a return to street graphing in a fun setting that had a little bit of adversity despite the general ease of the environment. He was insanely cool. Like, honestly, if I compared his friendliness to convention people I met this year, he'd still be like the top 10 of friendliness. Like, he was just insanely nice. So that was a really cool experience.
That apple fell far from the tree, huh?
Oh yeah, nothing like Denzel in that way.
No, I actually saw a few posts and stuff this year about how Denzel was particularly mean this year, which is interesting to graphers. So my next one was back in March. We were able to arrange a private signing with Jushin Thunder Liger via big event. For anyone who knows me at all, I've been a fan of Liger since 97, I think, which is crazy. Now you're talking about it's 2025 now. So you're
28 years.
28 years. I've been a fan of this guy. I've met him a few times. Every time I've met him, he is over the top friendly. He's over the top nice. Years ago, years and years ago, when he got announced for Legends of the Ring Con, we actually should have talked about this with Terrence, and I actually forgot about it until just now. I actually dressed up like Jushin Liger and attended the con dressed in full cosplay. There's actually a really funny story about that, because I went into the bathroom to pee, and wrestler X-Pac walked in the bathroom and thought I was Liger, and then was kind of disoriented, didn't know what to say. He started speaking to me in Japanese, and I was like, "Nah, I'm just dressed up like him." He started cracking up and went nuts. Anyway, that was years and years ago. But seeing Liger in this setting, in a professional setting, as opposed to purely as a fan, we were behind the curtain. He was taking care of all of our stuff from a business perspective. Again, super cool, nicest could possibly be. I got some sick pictures and some unbelievable items that I absolutely love, and it was a real cool time for me.
That's a great one. Definitely a great memory. All right, next on my list was the screening event with William H. Macy in Patchogue. Funny enough, with William H. Macy, when I attended that show and bought my ticket, I hadn't watched Fargo yet. That was the first time in that theater where I'd seen Fargo. And I also hadn't watched Shameless. So I really didn't like him in a hell of a lot of things. It was just one of those moves where you get him when you can, because it's a smart move. And in that theater, I was like blown away with Fargo, to the point that the next night I actually went home and I watched it the next night again with my wife, because I wanted to see it. Like, I with parking issues, I was a few minutes late, so I wanted to see it start to finish. It's a flawless movie, in my opinion. I absolutely love it. And since then, I've started and completed Shameless, which is just a really fun ride. and Bill was just extremely friendly. It was a laid back local event, so I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny is I remember when I first was like, no, we have to do this. Like, you know, I don't really know, I don't know this guy. I'm like, no, you gotta. At that time, I had seen Fargo many times. I was a huge fan of Shameless. For me, Bill Macy he's one of those people. I don't understand why he doesn't do cons. He's extremely friendly. His
He would
credits are
draw well.
amazing. He would draw. His credits are fantastic. It's a no-brainer for me. Anyway, I'm glad we had the opportunity in that environment. It was amusing because the organizers were like, you can only get one thing signed, so naturally we got two. In typical marked out fashion. I wasn't going to, simply get one. What is this?
No.
But that was a great one too. So my next one was, and this is one of the ones you didn't even know who it was. We were out there in October. We randomly in public ran into author David Sedaris, and just the whole adventure of that. And I think what you said before about Washington is interesting because in a way this was kind of a return to that street graphing where you're looking, you going, is that who I think it is? Is that? Yes, it definitely is. And then kind of waiting for the right opportunity to approach and being met very warmly. And having a very fun, memorable conversation, a very fun, memorable, oddly personal conversation that is going to stick with me for a long time. And meeting authors, I think, is a little bit different from meeting any other kind of celebrity, at least for me, because I feel like with an author, and this is going to sound weird because I always make fun of people who have or claim to have like parasocial relationships with celebrities, but I almost feel like your knowledge of an author almost feels more intimate because you read and you pore over their words and you linger over their words, and so their words really stick with you. You feel like you know them more, and especially someone like Sedaris who writes autobiographically. Everything he does is kind of quasi memoir, so like you feel like you really know him, even though you don't, you don't know him from anyone. But so that was incredibly memorable for me. He was about as nice as could possibly be, and which made the whole thing. It's honestly, if not for my number one, that would be my number one for the year. But my number one was so transcendent that it takes precedence.
Yeah, I'm actually shocked that wasn't your number one. But I agree. That was a really cool experience. I mean, objectively speaking, I didn't know who he was, so I mean, it wouldn't be on my top 50. But it was a cool experience. And street meets, when they go right and you have like a positive experience, I think are a lot more memorable than paid meets, standing online, getting to the table. The more organic or even inorganic, just street meets that are just really just positive to me are always the most memorable. So that was a really cool one. All right, my number 2 on the list is Russell Crowe, Asbury Park's favorite musician. That was a cool event, largely because I didn't have to hear him perform any music. But that was a cool event. He was one of those people that kind of like went in and out. He was mostly nice on the street. I was always just lazy about going. Like I would, Greg would tell me he's at such and such hotel and I wouldn't go. He filmed Noah in New York. I didn't go. There were opportunities, and I just never went. And then COVID came, my life got busier, and I just figured I'll never get him. And it was one of those things, one of those names I would kick myself with when I would, just think about regrets in the hobby. Oh, I should have went when they got him. And then having the opportunity to get him was pretty cool. And it was also nice, even though in Europe it was just gangbusters, get as much as you can. It was still nice to be able to get one personal item done without any like resistance.
Honestly, the stress of not knowing how many items you can get, it soured that a little for me. And I'm also definitely not as big a Russell Crowe fan as you are, for sure. But it was still cool, and it was still one of those things where you're like, this Hollywood sort of royalty coming and doing this ridiculous farce of a music meet and greet was pretty neat. So I did appreciate that. So my top meet of the year was something that I did back in February. It's completely insane what I did, but basically the long and the short of it was I I flew out to San Francisco for basically a day to the Kids in the Hall. The Canadian sketch comedy troupe was doing a reunion, a set of 2 shows in San Francisco as part of Sketchfest. They did a full meet and greet for their show. So to get, and some of the kids do cons. Kevin McDonald does a lot of shows on the East Coast, not cons. He does a lot of shows. Bruce McCullough does a lot of shows where you can get meet and greets. Scott Thompson does some shows. Dave Foley does cons. Mark McKinney does nothing. They all did one con in Canada last year or the year before, the Toronto Fan Expo. But other than that, they really don't do much together. And so when they did a meet and greet reunion all together, and I had the opportunity to get that group photo op, and I was a complete nut. So I had custom Funko Pops made of all of their most iconic characters of sorts, and I brought that box with me to San Francisco, and I had them all sign the box, which they were flipping out about and stuff. And so that was the coolest thing for me. I have my group photo op. To get a group photo op with the Kids in the Hall is something that you can't be replicated. It's a sort of a one of a kind thing that is very memorable for me.
I'll be honest, I completely forgot that was this year. That's something that feels like a lifetime ago.
I know, right?
But I mean, I've heard you talk about Kids in the Hall so much. That was absolutely, I see why that was number 1 on your list. That was a really awesome experience. Okay, so my number 1. I feel like you probably know who it is. The listeners probably know who it's going to be, but here it is anyway. My number 1 is Macaulay Culkin. Obviously, we just covered Macaulay Culkin a few episodes ago, so I'm not going to go super crazy with this. But Home Alone and Home Alone 2 are just beloved classics from my childhood up until today. I never thought I'd meet him, so getting the chance to meet him was awesome. And that absolutely is the highlight of my 2024 from a hobby perspective.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. It was cool and all, but my feelings on it are I enjoyed it. I think it was cool. I think the uniqueness of it made it cooler. The fact that it was sort of a one-off thing. And if honestly, if he recedes back into obscurity, which I do think there is a possibility that might happen, then that it would have been sort of a wild thing to have happened.
Yeah, I think there's probably I'm definitely not being Nostradamus here saying this, but I think there's probably one of 2 ways this goes. I think he hits cons and becomes just like an out there person in society and does a lot of this stuff, or you never see him again. I don't think he'll go years and then pop up again. I think it's going to be all or nothing as far as what we see going forward from Mac. All right. So that wraps up the top personal meets of 2024. Our next category is the top convention lineups. So for me personally, I will be
just give it hold on, just a little bit of context. This was one of the more hotly debated ones on Marked Out. People would go back and forth about what was the best convention, what was the worst convention, what lineups were fresh, new. This was a thing that people really cared about, and it's to me it's very interesting because again, what we think about and what we value will be, I guarantee, it's different. Here's what I'm going to wager. Number 1, our lists are actually very similar, but probably for pretty different reasons. That's my prediction.
I could believe that. Just to give context, and you can give your own individual context, I'm basing this on strictly shows I attended. I would not claim to be an expert and know all the ins and outs of different lineups, who canceled last minute, who was replaced. I don't know. I barely honestly know what I attended. So I'm sticking just to what I did. So if there was a cool lineup somewhere else, like the one that Mel Gibson did, that was an awesome lineup on paper, but I wasn't there. So that is not going to be on my list. I have 4 cons on my list. So do you want to start us out bottom to top?
Sure. I only have 3 on my list. There were 3 cons that were noteworthy for me as far as being top to bottom amazing lineups. So my number 3 is that this show is a perennial top contender. Monster Mania Cherry Hill in March. You had Sam Raimi, you had John Cleese, Winona Ryder. Not Winona Ryder. Why do I keep saying that?
Juliette Lewis.
Juliette Lewis. I said Winona Ryder today before too. When I looked at the picture, I said Winona Ryder. It's Juliette Lewis. I don't know why I do that. And the Starship Troopers reunion. Now it's funny because Starship Troopers would become a theme over the course of the year, and I'm always game for a Starship Troopers reunion. But between Raimi, Cleese, Lewis, Starship Troopers, for me, Monster Mania Cherry Hill was an A+ show, and I had a great time. Monster Mania is always a great time.
All right, that might have been an oversight on my part. That should be on my list somewhere. I would add it if I didn't refuse to have our lists be biased in any way. So that's not on my list. Oh well. So I'll give 4 and 3 then, since I had one more than you. So my number 4, and you were going to laugh at me for the reasons why. WrestleCon Philly. WrestleCon Philly finally got Nails and Tony Schiavone off my lists. And on top of them, it also had Ric Flair, Ronda Rousey. There's a ton of people, even though I just only named 2. I think it was pretty stacked, even though I really didn't meet that many people. It was just everyone you could think of was there.
Yeah, that show I got that was WrestleCon. That's when I got Aja Kong and Kyoko in Hawaii. Yep. I got Ronda Rousey. I got Ultimo Dragon, who was so overpriced that it was offensive. And who was the other guy I got? Because I had the figure. Atsushi Onita I got as well, who was randomly in town. They did weird when WrestleMania weekend they have weird draws from all over, and those were cool. Did you? I can't remember. Did you end up getting Jordan Grace at that show?
I did. I got Jordan Grace and her husband, Jonathan Gresham.
I ended up passing, probably erroneously, but as it was.
Her contract is just about up. I think I don't think anyone's going to be surprised when they see her come into the Rumble like she did last year. She's definitely going to this year, and I think she'll probably be starting full time with the company sometime this quarter, from what I last heard.
So, what was your other one on this list?
Big event in March. That lineup, we had a lot of business there, but you had Stacy Keibler, who up until that point had only done one convention. You had Kevin Von Erich, who rarely comes in these parts of the world. Kurt Angle, just a ton of people. It was a really stacked lineup. I remember being there and just being amazed at the assortment of talent.
I'm here for that. So then for me, my number 2 con of the year was Fanatics Fest in New York City. We spoke about it at length. The names on this list from top to bottom. I was there for Hogan, who I've been waiting to come to New York for years. Current WWE talent, bringing in CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Rhea Ripley. These are just crazy, crazy names. And so fantastic show.
Absolutely right. Such a great choice. I have it too. Fanatics Fest is number 2 on my list. And as we got into, there were obvious organizational problems. It wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But the amount of talent I saw in a single day, and that's with missing the Knicks on Friday because I would have lost too much money missing work. That's with all the A-list athletes that I just didn't feel like spending $10,000 in that weekend to meet. There is not a single convention ever with more star power than that show. I will take that against any show known to man. It was absolutely insane. And like you said, finally seeing Hogan back in these parts, CM Punk again, the people like Jey Uso, who I know you're not a big fan of, being, he's like a white whale that's eluded me for years. Just a great show.
So I imagine our number 1 show is probably going to be the same. So my number 1 show for 2024, and it really was not close, was New York Comic Con. There have been for the past couple of years, I've been pretty down on New York Comic Con. 2023, 2022, 2021, those lineups really were not good for me. And there was a lot of wasted time. There were things that I just didn't that weren't doing it for me. And so this year it was just hit after hit after hit after hit. Every announcement they made was like, I need that person, I need that person, I need that person, I need that person. From the House of the Dragon reunion to a bigger Starship Troopers reunion involving Denise Richards. For those who know me, Denise Richards has been on my list for a decade. And so when Denise Richards was announced, I was golden. Orlando Bloom, Mikey and Ian from Shameless, John Boyega, Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes together. The show was stacked from top to bottom. I was busy the entire weekend, but the good kind of busy, because I got lots of cool stuff and it was really fun and I had a great time. And it was probably the best lineup in close to a decade. It was extraordinary, and for me anyway.
Yes, my number one was also New York Comic Con, and for many of the same reasons as the names you listed, so I'm not going to restate them. I think you could probably make an argument this NYCC versus the one with Stallone and Weaver, and maybe you could argue that the top whatever that they had on that show were so heavy it would outweigh everything else. But to me, at least with my fandoms and my preferences, if you took the 25 names from any other show, even the best shows, no show was this deep. This show is deep top to bottom for me. I spent way more money than I should have spent. It was a crazy show. And I agree with you. I feel like NYCC for the last couple of years kind of just existed. It coasted. It had people, but it was never that exciting. I would see like RICC and Steel City and be like, oh, I wish those shows were in my city. And this year it's like, okay, this, NYCC is standing up with them. And speaking of which, RICC is probably the only year I can think of since we've been going to RICC that there wouldn't be RICC somewhere on this list. Looking back, that lineup, that show has not aged well in this year. I think it actually, I would go as far as to say it kind of sucked.
I mean, I think the one innovative guest they had was JoJo Siwa. Everyone else was someone who had been announced before and canceled, or it was a lot of retreads. People drew, they did well. Ernie Hudson did well. The kid from Harry Potter, what's his name?
Matthew Lewis
did well. Really, some of these people did well, but I mean, how many times has Matthew Lewis been around and canceled or whatever? It wasn't like he was innovative or something new. I will say JoJo Siwa was an innovative. She drew terribly, really alarmingly bad for someone who's such a mainstream name. But that show, I think with the way you said it was great. It didn't age well at all. A big part of it was the American Pie reunion that completely flopped. Was just devastating for that show. That show is having identity problems. It needs to figure out what it wants to be, because the sheer number of low-level names that it has detracts actually from your overall experience. I think that's what the case for this show, and it's a shame because, like you've said before, Rhode Island was one of consistently our favorite shows to go to. There's something for everyone in Rhode Island, but not this year.
And honestly, what I just said about Rhode Island is actually on my list coming up for one of the other categories. So I already said it. I already said it all, so I'll just say it and move on when we get to that. Okay, so for our next category, we are looking at the top marked out collectibles moments of the year. From my point of view, this is just going to be the stuff that I felt the most excited about, the most passionate about as like a business owner, as a collector, whatever, profitable, long-term profitable, whatever, whatever the context is. That's how I'm taking this list. How about you?
Yeah, I think it was stuff that helped me look at the business a little bit more clearly. How about that?
Okay. So you want to start us top to bottom?
Sure. So the first thing for me was the Billy Stark signing from February, because that for me solidified the kind of direction that we're really going full steam ahead with now, which is trying to identify and figure out raw up and coming talent who we think will be money in the future, building those relationships now before they make it big. And then, honestly, seeing right after we did that signing with Billy, seeing her get that push, and then now winning that belt, is like, all right, now there's a kind of an incredible satisfaction from that, and that was kind of the impetus for the WWE ID stuff that we're doing now, and other stuff in the future about identifying them early before they're unattainable.
Yeah, I have 5 for this list. I'm not sure how many you have.
I have 3.
Okay, so I'll do 2 in a row right now. So my first one, I kind of combined all of this into one. It's Billy Starkz for the exact same reasons that you said. Plus, she's just a delight to work with. Great personality, very genuine person. Also, Zilla Fatu, and then further down the highway of future stardom, but I think definitely on that road is Diamond Virago, who we brought out for our only public signing of the year, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Those are 3 people. They're not on the ID list. Obviously, I think Billy's probably a little above that at this point, being an AEW.
Definitely above that. Yeah.
And Zilla, I think, is gonna just leapfrog that entire process. He's gonna either debut in NXT or probably the main roster. And Diamond, I think, is going to be on that ID list in the next year or two, assuming that concept continues, which I think it will. My next one, same page, basically, just about the future being bright. Our ID initiative starting, working with Bryce Donovan, Aaron Rourke, having more lined up. Like you said, I felt like the Billy Starkz private, our second one, sort of steered our direction a little bit. Like it just, like, who we were and what we wanted to do as a company became more clear. So just being able to work with these people and try to figure out who the next big stars are. And then, like, prior to recording, I sent you that Instagram post that Bryce made with all the like a bunch of the ID guys and girls, like, on NXT sitting front row. And that was just like, that was cool. Like, I don't even mean from like a Mark perspective, but like the guy that was sitting in your living room 2 weeks ago with your cat around doing all our stuff was on NXT looking like a complete superstar. Like,
he looked like a unit. He looked like an animal on NXT. Yeah. He looks huge. He looks ready. When you sent me that video, I was like, hell yes. That was incredibly exciting. And that's funny because my number 2 moment was having the WWE ID talent at my dining room table. just because it went from the Billy Starkz thing was an idea that we executed. We made an offer that made sense for this kind of thing that we were doing. It was accepted, and it was not. We didn't necessarily believe that it would be accepted on those terms. It was accepted, and then we went, aha. This is a model that we can use. And then this model is now being executed with the ID guys at my dining room table and with the stuff happening at PWJ next month, but in the next couple of weeks. And having that was incredibly cool, and I know is going to be successful. After seeing the video, I'm more convinced than ever that Bryce Donovan is getting called up.
Yes, absolutely right. You have 2 more, correct?
I have one more.
Oh, so I'm gonna go and give another one right now. Yeah. I have on my 3rd spot on the list, I have my private signing with Marked Out Collectibles legend, I guess, at this point, and Marked Out Radio legend, Joe Hendry. Because listen, here's the deal. Joe Hendry, we've gotten into, as far as a vendor working with him through Sorrentino Promotions were extremely helpful, but working with Hendry at that moment, he is not easy to work with. He's a bit of a pain in the ass. He thinks too high of himself. All those things are true. But at the same time, before this ID thing was a thing that we were doing, we were always trying to find the next couple of stars. And this is going back a couple big events. I don't remember how many big events. I've never actually said this publicly. But we were in correspondence with both Joe Hendry and Jacob Fatu. And the timing, the numbers, all of the things like that didn't really work out, and we went in a different direction. But Joe Hendry is one of those guys that I was looking at for a couple of years now, saying he's going to get over. He's going to be big. So he was already over. I didn't get to capitalize when I wanted, but he was so over at that point, I was still able to capitalize. I made a lot of money. I have a lot of prints still to sell. It was cool just on that sort of a level that I wanted to work with him, and I did. It would have been nice if he was a little more easy to work with, but that's okay. As we said last week with Olivia, not everything is going to be easy. So since you have one more, I will give my number 2, and then we will take it home on this category. My number 2 from the March big event was our private signing with Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle is an all-time favorite of mine, an all-time great. We got a lot of really cool stuff. Honestly, some of which I still have to put on our eBay store. So that's going to be one of my missions for this week. We got a lot of great product done, and we had a great price, and it was just kind of cool to get a lot of stuff done by Kurt in a setting that wasn't quite as crazy as, they often get.
So now it's my number 1.
Yes, and then my number 1 after that.
I have a feeling it's going to be the same. So my number 1 moment of the year was starting this podcast. This is a lot of fun for me. It's the response to it has been fun. The way that it informs how I make other decisions has been crucial. It's just the ideas that we're constantly churning through. It's like a weird synergistic cycle where we're trying to come up with ideas for content that end up turning into business ideas. Business ideas turn into content. They interact with each other. They inform each other. The podcast is easily the moment of the year for me.
If I viewed this category the way you did, it would 1,000% have been mine as well. I was looking at this I was hyper fixated on Marked Out Collectibles. To me, this was a Marked Out radio moment, so I didn't even consider that. I agree. Like, in general, this has been an absolute awesome experience. I wish I listened to you sooner, but I guess everything happens when it's supposed to happen for a reason. So I agree with you totally. It's just like the cyclical effect of content is business strategy, and business strategy is content, and it just all sort of feeds one another. I absolutely love doing it. But my number 1 moment from a collectible standpoint was a private signing with Bret Hart. Bret Hart is on my Mount Rushmore. I got a ton of really cool inventory done, some of which has sold out, some of which is still teetering on the brink of selling out. I got a bunch of my personal stuff done. Like, I didn't have enough already with like 40, 50 autographs already in my collection. But when you have a good price and a good opportunity to get more Bret stuff done, you take it. And that was pretty cool, just to be, banging out a bunch of Bret stuff for a good price.
And it's always cool when you're working with someone like Bret, and you're like, yep, Bret's as cool as you'd hope he would be.
Yeah.
Bret's a cool guy. He's just a cool guy.
Yeah.
He's very dry humor, Bret's a great guy. And that was a great time. It's funny because Bret is a legend, and I wasn't nervous around Bret.
No.
He doesn't exude that kind of energy at all, which was very awesome.
Agreed. All right, our next category are the top disappointments of 2024. I will again be looking at this from the perspective of what disappointed me, not the hobby overall. How about you?
I'm not gonna lie. I only have 2 in this category, and it was hard. It was hard for me to come up with disappointments, and I have a feeling that when I hear yours, I'm gonna go, dang it. But I had a hard time with this one.
I have 4, but we talked about 1. So the 1 is RICC. Just it felt disappointing. When you look at the names, it really wasn't a bad show, but it felt disappointing. I didn't have the same excitement that I had leading up to coming back from as I did the other shows. Maybe it was its sequence on the calendar, being the 19th event we did in 3 weeks. I don't know. I may have been burnt out a little bit, but it just didn't feel as exciting. So that was number 4. Number 3 was our David Howard Thornton autograph debacle.
I forgot. I forgot about that. I honestly pushed that in my head with good reason. You're right. It was a nightmare. Yes.
That absolutely sucked. I take some of the blame on us going on the pro-op day to get autographs. But I mean, going 2 days is a nightmare when it's, you're talking a 3-hour drive going. You needed the op. I wanted another op. So, I mean, it is what it is. But it sucked. No different way to put it.
It was bad. It was real bad.
Yeah.
My first disappointment is something that is not public knowledge, but here it becomes public knowledge now. We had talked for months and I'd gotten prices, and I'd sort of done preliminary organizational things to try and get a Hulk Hogan private going, and we were not able to do it, and it looks like we will not be able to do it. It just the numbers didn't work and the logistics didn't work, and so that for me is a tremendous disappointment because I really wanted to make it happen.
Yeah, that was one of those moments where I sort of felt, until we were slapped in the face with the reality of the terms and conditions, where I'm like, wow, the fandom and the business can make sense. Like, going to Florida, being around Hulkster, getting stuff done, if it made sense on top of that, would just be an awesome little accomplishment. But like you said, it's not to be. That actually should have been on my list. I completely forgot about that.
You blocked it out. It was, I mean, yeah, we started to really seriously get into the logistics of it, and it just doesn't work. And maybe the problem is, like, on one level, I should be like, let's do an episode where we go into the nuts and bolts, dollar by dollar logistics of something like that, just to expose it and so people understand how it works. But part of me still wants to be like, well, maybe we'll give it a shot next year. So, so I don't know.
I think this could be our new Bunkhouse Stampede Olivia Hussey episode. One day we'll get to it. One day we will get to it. Okay, so my number 2 disappointment was WWE's World Store. I think that's what it's called, in Philadelphia during WrestleMania weekend, being the absolute drizzling you-know-what. I'm not going to make you bleep it. But it sucked. It was terrible. We got there early on my urging. I would honestly call you a captive at this point. You had no desire to do any of this. You were just along for the ride. We waited online. We got in. I thought, hell, I'll get a program. Maybe I'll find one thing to flip to pay for the program, and that would be nice. And the programs were somehow sold out. All the stuff that you could flip was sold out. It sucked.
And we really didn't tell this story publicly.
No.
So we drove in. What day was that? Friday or Saturday?
Saturday. It was day 1 of WrestleMania.
Yeah, and so the store had opened like Wednesday or Thursday, right? But we had made the assumption that they would do at least some level of restocking each day. So that Saturday morning, just so we were first in line. I've never been first in line at anything in my life. We arrived so early, we were first in line. Literally, we established the line. We had to be like, no, get behind us. We're here. Like, we did that. We were those people. We established the line. And by the time it opened, there were thousands of people behind us. We were numbers 1 and 2. And so we did this fully expecting. We spent hours and hours of having to pee and just standing in this line. And I remember, like, well, it's going to be worth it because we're going to get something that's interesting. And there was nothing there. They never did a restock. So shelves were largely empty. The stuff that was there was not unique. It was overpriced. It wasn't even good. It was. I forgot to put this on my list. I absolutely should have. That sucked. It really, that event, that I guess whatever you call it, it's not an event, whatever it is, it was terrible.
Yeah. I was sitting on that line, and it's probably lucky for me that it did suck, but I was thinking, I'm like, oh, if they have those Cody weight belts that are like numbered, I might buy one because it's a memory from being here, and screw it, you only live once. And I was all the exclusive stuff. I was like I was trying to convince myself as to why I needed it, and then it was like nothing cool, like you said. And I think I bought a cup. And I bought a poster, which, of course, they put the poster online, and it went on clearance. And so that sucked on. I shouldn't have bought it, but whatever.
It's just my turn now, right?
Yep.
And my other disappointment of 2024 was the Homelander debacle from Monster Mania, where, Homelander was announced as the headliner for Monster Mania, Anthony Starr, and then he does a mysterious cancellation, and then is suddenly announced as a headliner for a creation-based con, The Boys, and then he cancels that too. The Anthony Starr situation in 2024 is puzzling to me. I know, and I don't want to be too highly speculative, but I know that Anthony Starr has had some issues in the past, shall we say, and then maybe that is the reason for why these shenanigans occurred, but I'm not sure. All I do know was that his absence really put a damper on that Monster Mania show, and his honestly his cancellation from the show the Boys Con creation, it screwed them over too. So he was a big mess this year.
You heard it here first. Marked Out Collectibles next year is going to run Cancel Con. We're booking Anthony Starr and we're booking Sean William Scott, and we're going to see which one shows up.
It's a good chance.
But anyway, I imagine not. My number one disappointment. Michael Richards releases a book without a book tour. I was perhaps unreasonably confident that he was going to do one. In hindsight, I'm not really sure why I felt so confident he was going to do one, but I thought he would. I really thought he would. He was coming out of hiding after his racial tirade. He wrote this book. I thought he would come full circle on the redemption story. For me personally, I love Seinfeld. I got Julia. I got Jason. I got Jerry by brute force outside Madison Square Garden once, but that'll be a story for another day. It's valid, and I needed simply Michael Richards to complete the quartet. I have Larry, so I was pumped. I was pumped for the announcement that never came, and that was a big letdown for me.
You were not confident that book tour was happening. You were certain that book tour. You talked about it as if it were a fait accompli.
I was already planning days off. I'm like, I don't care if it's even the day before a holiday. Like, I'm taking it off. I don't care. Like, it was certain to me, and I was let down big time.
That's it for disappointments.
That is it for disappointments. All right, so our next category, top realistic names you want to get in 2025. Now, I stipulate that with realistic because in the old days of Marked Out, people would throw out a lot of crazy names. Although, looking back, a lot of those crazy names that I mocked and said, oh, you out of your mind, they'll never do cons, have probably done cons since they were called crazy. So, I mean, what truly is realistic? I don't know.
That's the fun of the debate, right?
Yes. How many do you have on your list for this one?
I have 3.
I have 5.
And they're not amazing. They're not amazing.
So I'll start it out. I'll start it out with 3. 2 of the names come from the exact same franchise, so it'll be easy. First off, Ralph, I think it's Fiennes or Fiennes. I'm not sure how it's pronounced.
Fiennes.
Okay, from Harry Potter, who's Voldemort. He did Liverpool Comic-Con. I have hope he'll come somewhere on the East in the United States. And if he does, probably on the East Coast, because that's how it usually goes. Will he? I don't know. I hope he does. Second, also from the Harry Potter franchise, and I will be making them share a spot since they are twins. I think that's fair. They shared a womb, they can share a spot. Oliver and James Phelps. So they've done a lot of cons. They've canceled a lot of... Actually, I think they've probably canceled more cons than they've done, but they've done a couple. And I have so many names from Harry Potter. I want to see them at a show that I'm at. So here's hoping I see them somewhere.
I think both of those are pretty reasonable. I think Ralph is almost certainly he's an NYCC name, right?
I agree.
So I think we're going to see him at NYCC. That's to me that's actually a very I'm willing to take that bet. Let's put it like that. That's a good name.
If that's so, I have to buy another wand. That sucks.
Oh God, help us. And so my first one. This is a retread for me, but I was unable to get an autograph last time because they sold out too quickly. I think Ewan McGregor is going to do another run.
I think so. I think it's honestly inevitable. I think he sees the money that the Star Wars greats before him have made over a career doing these cons. A lot of them are dead. So I think it's natural for him and Hayden to just, I think they're always going to come back around at some point. I see him for Rhode Island, honestly, if you put a gun to my head.
I mean, I was actually counting on him going to Rhode Island after I missed him at NYCC. And he didn't do that. That wasn't part of his run.
Yeah.
And he did a bunch of fan expos instead.
It's going to happen. All right, next on my list is a name that I know you don't care about, which kind of blows my mind. But Bryce Dallas Howard, who did she did Steel City up here most recently. Jurassic Park, the new trilogy, which is, nowhere near the original, but still it's Jurassic Park. She's in The Help, which is a movie I quite enjoy. I'd like to meet Bryce Dallas. She's another one I see either NYCC or RICC.
Yeah, what it is. she's done nothing that is interesting to me. The Jurassic Park trilogy. None of the Jurassic Park movies count for me except the original one. So I would love, Sam Neill and Laura Dern. I don't think they're coming out here because there were ample opportunities to get them out here, and it just never happened. So, I'm not interested in her. So it's true. My realistic name is someone who briefly flirted with the idea of doing a con run and then just didn't. And then I'm hoping will be convinced to come out, and that's Sigourney Weaver. She did NYCC, and then just kind of stopped. And so I'm predicting Sigourney Weaver comes out again.
I think that's a pretty safe bet at some point. Okay, my number 2 on my list is Ron Howard, father of Bryce Dallas. He is actually, which we haven't discussed on here yet, but they're doing a whole Howard family reunion at MegaCon Orlando. You have Ron, you have Bryce, and you have Clint Howard. And they are doing all 3 days. Ron Howard is always, much like his daughter, extremely nice on the street, even takes time. He's a guy that I think is going to do a convention, realize, hell, this is pretty nice. I make a nice amount of money. I talk to people I don't mind talking to. Let's do more of this. So I'm hoping he does something down, up around here.
So the difference is, I think Ron would be doing these things to benefit his brother and his daughter. Ron is extraordinarily wealthy, personally. And so he doesn't need the money for these things. His daughter is not as wealthy, and his brother is definitely not as wealthy. So I'm not as confident, but I'm also not opposed to the idea of them taking the show on the road a little bit for his brother, for Clint's benefit.
Agreed.
And so my number 1 most realistic name, I think that Jensen Ackles will finally take the hint from his screen brother and do some non-creation shows in the U.S.
Ooh,
I've been waiting for it for years. I've been waiting for it for years, and he did 1 or 2 in Europe. He flirted with the idea. It's time for Jensen to do some U.S. non-creation U.S. shows.
Well, listen, if he does anything, it's going to probably be Steel City. So be ready for that temptation if it happens.
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
All right, so my last name, while you were talking, you made me think of one that should be the last name, and that's John Travolta, he did 1 show, I think, up in Boston, and he was flirting with more, and then COVID came and pulled the rug out from under him. But he's not the name. He should be the name, but he's not, because I'm not changing my list. My final name it's kind of a funny one. Bonnie Aaron's The Nun. The first Nun movie I kind of thought was lousy. Second Nun movie I thought was pretty good. To me, the Nun is just an iconic, scary character from the Conjuring universe, which I love. Somehow, humorously, with the amount of horror shows I do, I've never gotten her. I have a stack of crap I need her to sign. So just to get her off my list once and for all, well, not once and for all, until the next movie comes out and I have more stuff. But just to get her finally, she's number 1 on my list.
I mean, that's someone who you will, if you make the effort, you will see her. She does a bunch of shows in the year, so
yeah, it'll happen.
That's that one. The next one is, and this is kind of interesting one. Our New Year's resolutions and goals for 2025.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. I think this is one I feel like we are going to be very, very, very different.
Very different.
I'm curious to see. Yes. So, do you want to start us out bottom to top?
Yeah, so my 1 goal, and this is for Marked Out Collectibles, is to book just 1 totally unique, creative, or innovative guest. When we booked Grand Metalik, and we were the first booking he ever took, autograph signing wise, that was kind of an indescribable rush. And now that we're working with these ID talents, and that we're a lot of them were their first signing they're ever doing. We were there's something that is very cool about that. And so there are names, and they're not public. Some wrestling names, some non-wrestling names, who I've been trying to get either for privates or for public appearances, and I have not yet been successful. So one of my goals for the year is to pull one of those off.
I know exactly who you mean, and that would be very cool. All right, my goals are starting at the bottom of my list. Keep it was what you said. Keep trying to be ahead of the curve on future stars. So I agree with you completely. Just try to be unique, try to be original, and just keep doing what we're doing and just get better at it.
Number two is going to be you made a joke about this before. I am in the process of my resolution is, and I'm actually, my goal is for this month to dramatically downsize my personal collection.
Wow.
Where I have a ton of stuff, and it's one of those things where the process of collecting it brought me joy, and this is true for me. But the process of selling it also brings me a ton of joy. And right now, it's in its current situation where it's kind of just sitting, is not bringing me any joy at all. And so it's time for this stuff to go. And so I did this once before, with my almost my entire collection was purged years ago. It was an incredibly uplifting and freeing experience, and that's one of my goals for the beginning of this year.
I wonder if you rebuild after that, or if that's where you sort of stay.
I will say, I don't know. Yeah, you know what it is? There's just too much stuff. And then what I'm noticing is when I'm trying, even when I try and look at and appreciate the stuff, it's not out. I can't find it. There have been times where I had these projects where I needed to bring them somewhere and I couldn't find them. And that's a wake up call. No, it's a wake up call where it's like I shouldn't have to do that. And that's crazy. And so the answer really is to get rid of a very, 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 very large chunk of it.
Okay, so my next goal, which is one that you may have not put on the list, but it's I know for a fact you share it. We are going to be working on in the first quarter of 2025. We're going to have this all in motion. We are working to get our inventory seamlessly listed on our eBay store, our .com, our Facebook marketplaces, everywhere. It's a headache to say the least to operate and keep like 3 to 4 different stores active and up to date. So we are going to be making some changes that sort of streamline that process. The wheels are already in motion, and it's going to be a much more just intuitive shopping experience from us once these changes are made.
So you are incorrect. You said that might not be on my list. That is actually number 1 on my list.
Ooh, okay.
To get all marked out inventory streamlined across all platforms. And so for me, that's an important thing. I feel like we have so much stuff. We're sitting on such a gold mine of cool stuff, and that not and maybe part of this is ego, but I feel like that between your personal collection, my personal collection, and our inventory, we have some of the coolest stuff out there. And if I can only help but feel that if people saw it, people would want it. Yeah. However, whatever form that takes. So that definitely, stay tuned for a streamlined shopping experience from Marked Out coming in quarter 1 of 2025. That's a goal that has to happen.
Absolutely. And my last one, which are actually 2, but I can combine it into 1. Sean is getting rid of stuff. I'm getting more, guys. I'm going all in. I am going to keep building my signed Hasbro collection. I am loving it. I'm spending too much money on it, but I'm loving it. I'm not going to get anywhere near all of them. I figure get as many as I can while these guys are still kicking. If I can get 1 or 2 from every color card, that would be awesome. But just get as many as I can, as many that make sense. And I have a couple more out that will be signed in the near future. That's very fun. And you're going to laugh at me now, but I think I'm all in on the big rubber guys, at least on the living people.
Oof.
I'm all in. I got the Powers of Pain signed through K&S, and they're awesome. They really are. And now they released this new set with the Brainbusters, Missy Hyatt, and Rick Martel. And part of me would love to say, well, Rick Martel is as good as dead because he hasn't come stateside anymore, but he will, I think. I really think he will. So I'm gonna buy them all. That's $200 and something down the drain. But yeah, they're awesome. I'm in.
All right, it's an admirable goal, just not one that I share. And so now the things that are always interesting. We're gonna do our bold predictions for 2025. I kind of went. I had a really hard time with this one, and this is like your forte. I'm not great at this, but I have some predictions in here. They're not really exciting, but I think that they're gonna speak to a change in the market that we're gonna see coming up.
Let's hear it. Start us out.
All right, so my first prediction is that Brad Pitt does either a con or a private signing in 2025.
I could believe a private signing. A con would be ridiculous, but I feel a private signing's possible.
I mean, you say that, but someone like an Orlando Bloom is more of a franchise person than a Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt's more of kind of a celebrity-ish paparazzi type, but in terms of movie franchises, someone like Orlando Bloom does cons rarely. I think we're right to see the next level of person take the leap into cons, and that next level would be someone like a Brad Pitt.
I mean, listen, nothing would shock me anymore. So, I mean, I would absolutely be on board for that. I think it would actually be a question of how far would I go to get him. Like if he did a con somewhere with a plane ticket attached, if I didn't think he was going on a full-scale run, would I fly somewhere? I don't know.
Valid question.
Yes. All right, how many do you have on your list?
I have 3 total.
Okay, so I'll go with my first one. My first one is something I talked about, I think, 2 weeks ago on the podcast. I am going to predict that Vera Farmiga does Monster Mania Cherry Hill along with Norman Bates. So I'm blank. Freddie Highmore. I don't think Freddie Highmore is a one and done. I think they have something planned bigger than that. I think they're going to go Bates Motel reunion. I think they're going to get Vera finally. I think they could get Nestor Carbonell. I think you could get that Max Thoreau. I think they're going to have a little bit of a Bates Motel reunion as the headline. Because so far, I mean, that Return of the Living Dead, that's not it.
No.
Freddie on his own is not it. They can have another headliner and Freddie just sort of as the 1B, but I don't know. I think they're going all in on Bates Motel.
All right. My number 2. These are my number 2s were all privates. And they all kind of related to each other. I say for number 2, we're going to see Clooney do something, whether it's a private or it's an appearance. That this is someone who has been out of the spotlight a little bit, and who would make an absolute ton of money doing this.
Listen, if Brad does it, George will do it. I honestly think it's if you go with one, I think you go with both. So I could believe that. All right, my next bold prediction, and honestly, I don't even know how bold this is, but I'm willing to stand on this. The headliner for WWE's portion of Fanatics Fest will be none other than John Cena to commemorate his last year. He's cleared his schedule as far as filming. This is his priority. He will be at Fanatics Fest wearing that stupid-looking last tour shirt, which all his shirts are dumb-looking, but he's going to be suited, ready to commemorate this last tour. He will be WWE's headliner at Fanatics.
I don't think that's bold at all. I think that's pretty. That's almost a given. Yeah, I'd be willing to bet on that. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. That's probably more under realistic than bold. But I mean, still, he's a massive name. But that would be sick. The question is, do you pay for another Cena op?
Listen, right now I'll sit here and tell you how all the reasons I wouldn't, because I have so many. But chances are I absolutely would, because it's his last full-time run, and he will definitely come suited. That's how he always does these things. So I think I would, if he was suited. Or if I had reasonable expectation, he would be suited.
Hell, I remember, honestly, we did that Cena signing at GNC back in, what is that, 07 or 08, which was that was sick. I mean, oh my God. I was walking through the streets of New York City with an event chair, my Great American Bash chair, and then brought it to GNC and he signed it. That was all free. We bought that stupid $20 tub of garbage and I immediately returned it.
You also let the record state you also brought that steel chair to the spot to meet Danica McKellar, Winnie Cooper.
I did. Absolutely no shame whatsoever. I did. And she the whole thing. I was a rare breed of freak. Make no mistake. So and then my top bold prediction. I think the time is ripe for it. I think Tom Cruise is going to come out and do something.
You're taking some big swings. Jeez.
I am. You know,
it's like the steroid era in baseball all over again.
Yeah, you know, I've been thinking about, because the people who run the privates, the people who are willing to throw 6-figure, 7-figure numbers around, you know, the Marvel guys, they had their runs. The Marvel guys, you know, the guys like Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth and those guys, you can't. It's harder for the signing companies to make back what those guys are asking for, because now those guys are asking for money that is hard to come up with. You're talking about close to 7 figures, some of them. And so they're going to have, if the bottom line is, if you're going to pay, and I believe this is true, if you're going to pay 7 figures for Chris Hemsworth, then you might as well throw seven figures at Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise and see what bites. Now, I know that's tough because Tom Cruise is so fabulously wealthy and has so much, like, Tom Cruise is probably the biggest movie star of all time. And so I know but I think honestly, having the biggest movie star of all time do an appearance or a private signing or something like that will basically finally kick the floodgates open for literally anyone. And I think we still, even though we've had a lot of big names, you know, like a De Niro has done a private, or, you know, Pacino has done a private. No one at the level of a Tom Cruise, who in my estimation is the biggest movie star of all time, has done a signing like that. And so I think my bold prediction is that we see the floodgates really open, and someone unexpected and unpredictable of that huge caliber to do a signing.
Listen, every name you're predicting here is giving me a bit of anxiety, because it really puts me in a question of how far would I go to get them. So if they do anything, let it be from Pittsburgh to Providence. And not
would you have thought after he swore off signing completely, would you thought that Bryan Cranston will be doing a private? And here we are.
No,
you know?
I agree.
So you never really know.
Exactly. Okay, so my last two, and I'll sort of combine them. The first one I kind of believe. The second one, even when I say it, I'm not going to really believe it. But if somehow it ends up being right, I'm on record. All right, first of all, Mel Gibson hits the Eastern Seaboard somewhere. I don't think he had a great time in, where the hell was it, Utah?
Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City. Yep.
I don't feel like he had an amazing time, but I think he may have had a time well enough that he can come out again and make the money he made the first time. So I think Mel does either, you know, Steel City, RICC, NYCC. Gun to my head, I'd probably say Steel City, because that just seems to be the one that breaks ground first out here in this eastern part of the country. So I think we're going to see Mel Gibson on the eastern, you know, portion of the country. And here's the one I really don't believe, but I'm going to say it anyway. Either Sam Neill or Jeff Goldblum will appear somewhere, and I feel like a screening tour with like a screening of Jurassic Park and the evening with, I feel like that kind of a format like Macaulay Culkin might be perfect for that type of a thing.
I mean, you know, Sam Neill doing one of those things gets me out of the house. No question about it.
Goldblum wouldn't get you out?
Yes, but less so. Less so. You know, Goldblum has done more than Sam Neill has.
I have Jeff, so I would probably set it out if he did one, but I think he's probably more likely, because he was lined up for a con with COVID, and then I think he was another one of those that got sort of bumped with COVID and just never came back. But yeah, do I believe that will happen? No. Would I bet real money that will happen? No. But I'm on record. Laugh at me if it doesn't happen, but give me my flowers if it does.
That's why it's called a bold prediction. It's not called a tepid prediction for that reason. So, if you like what you hear, if you want to contribute and help out and bring us into the new year, please subscribe to this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or the Apple Podcast app. You can leave us a rating or a review on Apple Podcast, and you can leave us a rating on Spotify. You can also leave plenty of comments or thumbs up or thumbs down on YouTube. All interaction helps us tremendously and is much appreciated. So real quick, we'll run down what's coming up. We did this last week, but we have the in conversation with the Sopranos in Patchogue in a couple weeks. It's like this Q&A meet and greet kind of thing, pretty laid back. And then we talked about before that PWJ show. I can't stress enough that you should check it out. We're gonna have a table there. We're gonna be selling some goodies. We're gonna be hanging out, watching the show. That's the end of the month, and on the 26th. And then finally, ring us home.
We will be with Bill Murray and his blood brothers. I'm telling you, that guy definitely sliced his palm and he smeared some blood around. He's not playing around with that blood brother title. But we will be there. We will get out of that building as quick as humanly possible. Honestly, the only one that might run out of that building quicker than us is Bill Murray himself.
I think there's been a lot of like FUD going around where people are really spreading all kinds of rumors about that the nature of that meet and greet, about how it's going to be group photo op, and people don't really have any information about it. They're just nervous about it. There's going to be a story. You're going to have to check out the episode after that February 15th. We'll let you know how it went.
Absolutely right.
So if you're shopping for autographs, check out www.markedoutcollectibles.com or our eBay store at Marked Out Collectibles. To contact us for any reason, email markedoutcollectibles@gmail.com or join the Marked Out Collectibles official marketplace on Facebook. And to recap our current private signings on the slate, we have our WWE ID talent. So we have Brad Baylor, who we don't have a date for him yet, but the pre-orders are up. It's going to be within the next month or so. At the January 26th show, we have our signings with Zeta Steel, Jackson Drake, and Marcus Mathers will be done. So all items and orders for them are due January 24th. And then we have our non-ID people.
Yeah, we have Charles Mason, Brittany Brooks, and Emily J. They are also due January 24th. These are people we expect to be either on an ID list or on a television screen near you very soon.
So get them while you can, before you can no longer. And that's kind of that's going to be, I think, the ethos of who we are at Marked Out is going to be a big part of it, is going to be predicting and figuring out who the people are of tomorrow that people are going to want to see, and bringing those out, and kind of having the intrigue of predicting who those people will be.
I agree completely.
So that about wraps it up. Any last words before we officially head into 2025?
No, just thank you for a great 2024. All the subscriptions, all the likes, all the listens. We wouldn't be here without you. And let's keep it rocking in 2025.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how cool and exciting and interesting it is when we hear people talking about this podcast, or when people leave comments on YouTube or on Facebook or on Instagram, or make comments to us when they see us at a show. It's super cool. It's super exciting. It never gets old. And so again, we both truly appreciate the support in 2024, and I am very confident that things will continue to improve and get bigger in 2025. We'll figure out some other teaser topics that we can think about, like that Hogan private signing and stuff. We'll come up with some other teaser topics for moments of intrigue. We've been around this hobby a long time. We have a lot of stories. We've seen a lot of stuff, and we look forward to bringing you some really good guests in the new year as well.
Absolutely right.
So for markedout.com, Marked Out Collectibles, and Marked Out Radio, I'm Sean.
And I'm Dana.
Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see you next week.